You are listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry. Today's guest is Richard Bennett.
Welcome, Richard, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Thanks very much, Ashley. It's good to be here.
So Richard, as you know, we like to start in the beginning. So we're curious, where were you born? Where did you grow up in? Where did you go to school?
So I was born in a place called Crawley in West Sussex, down on the southeast of the UK. I went to school in the local area. It was in Reigate for my my secondary school, and then back to my local place in Horsham for sixth form. I was very science orientated as I grew up. And went off to Bristol University to study chemical physics.
Oh, wow. So your first job, was it in kind of that chemical physics field?
Not quite, no. I think, to be fair, by the time I'd done the degree, I had my fill of science for the time being. And I'd also developed an interest in the military and headed off to the army and commissioned into the army in the early 2000s.
Oh, wow. So what did you do? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that's all right. No, my first job was as what's called a troop commander. I took command of about 40 soldiers in a regiment in near Salisbury in what's called the Royal Corps of Signals, and there we dealt with electronic warfare and communications. This being the early 2000s, it was as we were beginning two very large campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq. Much of my sort of first 5 or 6 years or so was spent pretty much continuing on one operation or another. Not all of them over there, some of them in Bosnia or Northern Ireland and all sorts of other places like this. So it was quite an exciting start to my career.
Absolutely. So how long did you stay in the Army, and then what did you do after that?
Stayed in it for about 11 years. Decided it was time to settle down a little bit. The pace of life was pretty intense, and started thinking more about kind of my own personal development and where I wanted to head for. So headed off into civilian life, and I moved into a civil engineering firm, initially looking at performance improvement. Then moved on to a more kind of client-focused role, understanding how we won more work, and then predictably that led me into the world of bids.
Ah, yes. So another one who has fallen into the world of bids and proposals.
Yes, to an extent. I think interest led me as well, but yeah, that's how I ended up at the start of probably what we're going to talk about mostly.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your kind of career timeline from there in the world of bids and proposals.
Yeah, sure. I think like many servicemen, it takes a little while to sort of get settled in and understand what it is that you can really do. But I found obviously I had lots of experience in leadership and project management and getting things done. And I found that the fast turnaround time, the intensity and the pressure that's normally associated with bids was something I could handle well, and I had the right sort of skill set and experience. So I found myself adding some good value in bid management. I felt that the civil engineering area was interesting, but it wasn't really fast moving enough for me and my ambitions. So I really wanted to have a look at how businesses operated, and having done an MBA in the last few years of my service, I was really curious about consultants, and when an opportunity came up in PWC, I jumped to that as a way of doing something that I found myself to be good at around pursuits and proposals, but also getting those sort of insights into the inner workings of business and really solving problems.
So are you currently at PWC in their bid department?
Yes. Sorry, yes. So this is a timeline, isn't it? So that was about 5 years ago, walked through the doors of PWC, and I'm still very much there. I'm now what's known as a pursuit coach. So I did a little bit of bid management whilst also coaching our pursuits. And by that, I mean helping our teams to understand what their core messages are and helping to follow a sensible kind of process through through the first conversations with the client. Always focusing on the client value and what we're going to deliver for them. And now I do that on more exclusively with bid managers working for me.
Wow, yeah, very exciting stuff. So over the years working on bids and proposals, I'm sure you have a few memorable ones. Are there any that stick out in your mind?
Yes. Yeah, I think there are a number of reasons why they stick out. I think what I'd say in general, without going too deep into any particular bids for sort of confidentiality reasons, the bids that have really stuck out have been where teams have come together really well. I just love the way that teams get welded together in the pressure of bids, and people get on and understand how to add value to each other. When it works really, really well, you see people really focusing on a client issue and understanding how to push forward what they already deliver into a new space and innovate. And often it's at the most painful times, that sort of late evening close to the deadline, where you see the real innovation and innovative leaps happen. And you're up against it. You think, okay, well, how do we really differentiate in this particular case? And you've got a number of different experts in their field in the room, and they start with a blank sheet of paper and you go, okay, well, what about this? Well, and suddenly there's an idea that grows in front of you, and before you know it, you've got something that's really distinctive. But it's often is almost necessarily a little bit of a painful process to really take people out of their comfort zone and suggest some of these ideas. And I think those are the moments that really stand out for me, because it's where real value is created for us and for a client. It's that area where it all overlaps nicely. We've done something that's really specific for a client, and we've created something new.
Oh, yeah, definitely. When you have those moments where things come together and you have that aha kind of, oh, this is it, and it really makes it into the proposal, those are really, why we're in it, right? Those are the moments we live for.
Absolutely, yeah.
So before we dig into APMP a little bit, can you tell us 3 things that not many people know about you?
I really love surfing. Living in Reading, it's not the sort of thing you'd guess. It being as for those that aren't in the UK or even the south of the UK, it is a long way away from the sea, and the coast here is not terrifically wavy, but all the same, I do have a penchant for going and playing in the waves. I can't think of many things. I guess I tend to tell people about things on the whole. I'm struggling to think of any others.
How about 2 more things that Bhaskar and I don't know about you? Some interesting factoids.
Sure. Okay. So I think maybe a bit of a history in martial arts. Really enjoyed that. It's something that's sort of behind me now. I don't really have a great deal of time to go and train, but certainly my formative years, spent a lot of time doing kung fu and kickboxing.
Oh wow!
Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was I know there is a little bit of a theme sometimes to the way I go about things. I tend to do things that I'm not terrifically good at, and as you can understand, if you're not terrifically good at kickboxing, it's not very habit forming. So I thoroughly enjoyed it for quite a few years. But I was never one of those sort of really gifted people at it. So I as I say, it sits in the back of my mind as something I've always really enjoyed and would like to be better at than I really ever was. But all the same, it's one of those little hobbies. I've, in fact, particularly over the last year, I've developed a little bit of a sideline in gardening, just out of curiosity and because I do have a garden, lucky enough to have a little bit of space outside. Grew a few vegetable plants from seeds with my son, who's a 7-year-old, and we had a really interesting time learning about how seeds germinated and grow, and feeding the compost, and obviously making compost, which is a 7-year-old boy's absolute delight to go play with worms and slugs and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of caught on, and I do enjoy a bit of that in my spare time, just watching how these things grow, and with a little bit of sort of care and nurturing, you can grow sort of vegetables and plants and that sort of thing, and make your own space really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great way to spend the time with your son, and a learning experience as well. I love that.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll dig a little bit into APMP. When did you find out about APMP as an organization and become a member?
I think while I was with PWC, we got corporate membership of APMP.
Mm-hmm.
Probably about around about similar time to when I joined, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as a way of professionalizing what you do, I was really really encouraged by the fact that there was an organization out there that gave some sensible sort of benchmarks and some ideas about how I could develop my own personal practice and become professional. Prior to that, obviously I brought my own sort of skills and ideas and generally sort of common sense approach to it, picked up the tools that were around me from wherever I worked, whether it was in civil engineering or within PWC. But felt that without APMP, it was kind of lacking a bit of that sort of structure and the professionalism of understanding how other people are tackling similar problems in very different environments, which is always a really important way of kind of helping make yourself better at what you do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's one of the great things that the organization provides us with. So have you pursued any of the APMP certifications?
Yes, yeah, I have my practitioner certificate.
Oh, excellent.
And, sorry, go on.
I was going to ask, were you one who did the questionnaire or the test?
It was the questionnaire.
Okay. So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I found sort of studying for that quite helpful. We had learning groups at work, and so collectively we went through the material and kind of partly it was translating it and relating it back to what we did, and in other areas it was learning about a different approach and how we might then operationalize that in our own practice.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, some of the best stories of when it was a questionnaire, of people doing it together and kind of having that camaraderie and completing the questionnaire, it seems those individuals were able to complete it much faster than those who tried to do it on their own. I know myself, it took me several years.
Yeah. Yes, it's amazing what a different perspective brings, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so have you attended any of the APMP events, the local UK events or international conferences?
Yes, I haven't been to any for a year or so, but I have been in the past, where it's a mix of networking and also learning something new about an angle of bid management.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember kind of your first experience at one of the events and what that felt like?
I think in terms of what the first experience was like compared to others, I think it was fairly consistent. I mean, they're quite friendly things, and so even though I was walking on my own, it wasn't too much of an issue, and it was quite an open atmosphere to walking up to people and just finding out what they did, and I found that there's a good mix of people from, say, large corporates like me through to freelancers, and in particular, actually, for me, it was most interesting to meet freelancers and understanding how they were navigating the market. And I think one of the really interesting things you can test yourself with is if I walked out of my cozy sort of home in this corporation, how could I earn money through my skill sets, in the wide world. So it's really fascinating to see how different people build their businesses around slightly different propositions. And again, it helps me think about the way that I navigate my own business and the way that I go out to my internal clients, because the relationship should still be the same, really.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting to get those perspectives and understand how others are marketing to their clients, whether they're external or internal. So do you have any memorable experiences or contributions with APMP that you'd like to share with us?
I think that I went to one of the conferences. I think it was over with Oracle in the UK, and that was particularly interesting. I think some of the Oracle tech was kind of fun, and we managed to sort of see a little bit about how Oracle does what it does as well, and the way that APMP could open up sort of different perspectives by using its the different members it has. So we get to see bidding in a slightly different environment. I thought that was quite insightful.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That sounds like a great one. Any other kind of memories from bids and proposals that would be interesting to share with us?
I think, I mean, there's probably the topic I mentioned that's closest to me is kind of gaining respect for the for bids and proposals management as a profession. I think it's fair to say it's one of the younger professions out there, but it does have a really distinctive skill set, and I can see how that's happening in my own organisation and in others, where it's increasingly common that people reach for a bid manager or a specialist department that can help them navigate the world of landing business, particularly as procurement is sort of more driven to be fair and to search an increasingly diverse market, because there's so many different providers coming up all the time that as the market's more disrupted, any particular market you care to name has probably got more younger entrants in it these days than it may have had even only sort of 10 or 15 years ago. And so it's becoming increasingly important, I think, for firms to to be able to go and find their partners that they need quickly and effectively, which means that it's there's definitely a real job. There's a bid manager and working around that sort of area to make sure that firms know how to compete effectively.
Absolutely. Such an important point. And I think, APMP is doing a lot to try to professionalize it and reach out to universities and get people interested in the profession earlier.
Yeah, and that's why although I did sort of in some ways fall into bid management, I think it's also good to tell the story that it's an attractive profession, and absolutely right, that maybe people don't know about it early enough to actively seek it. Certainly I think that would be a good thing if people were introduced to the idea and it's an attractive career to go and start.
Absolutely. And hopefully we'll be there sooner rather than later. I know we're making some strides.
That's good. I think we're already there to an extent, but we could always do better.
Yeah. Oh, so in the UK, is it more known as a profession than maybe other parts of the world?
I certainly think so. Although the trouble is my experience is limited these days because I tend to talk to a lot of other bid managers. So, we do have a higher apprentice program at PWC, and we always have a few of every cohort roll through our team. And they're coming in and they're certainly familiar or kind of understand why the bid management profession is an important one, and the firm is considering it as sort of equally important in their education as moving through our other parts of the firm. And I definitely look at that as being evidence that the firm's at least taking it seriously. And if my firm is, it's certainly not special in that respect. I'm sure there are others in the market that are doing the same sort of thing.
Yeah. Wow. That's so great to hear. Well, I think that's a good transition over to kind of our surprise rapid fire questions round. Bhaskar will dig a little bit first into your hobbies and interests, and then some more of the fun, lighthearted questions.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. Thanks, Richard. So, Richard, let's talk about your hobbies, or let's talk about the three things that you mentioned before. Surfing. Is there any place that you recommend to do surfing?
I think if I was to pick a favorite, it'd be Costa Rica. I
Nice.
just loved surfing there. The water's warm. The waves were kind of gentle, but a decent size. The water's also nice and clear and contains lots of animals. And I found myself surfing there with a leatherback turtle, which was just incredible. Although it does usually mean there are jellyfish in the water, which comes as a mixed blessing. but on balance, it was a great thing. And one other thing was the pelicans who would, because the jungle was right down to the sea where I was. The pelicans were riding the updraft on the wave while I was surfing it. A little sort of squadron of 4 or 5 of these really rather large and remarkably graceful looking birds were sort of flying around me. It was one of those moments that sort of stays with you.
Totally. So, other than surfing in Costa Rica, what are the other most adventurous things that you have done so far?
Most adventurous? Well, that's probably the most adventurous with a surfboard that I've done. I think really enjoy sailing as well. I've sailed in a few different places in offshore in yachts. So it would be difficult to sort of pin down one more adventurous ones, but sort of things. I've done some races around the Isle of Wight and across the Channel, but I think my trip around the Western Islands of Scotland was probably a more interesting one, where we had a good mixed crew on board. We took the boat from Northern Ireland and sailed across the Western Scotland. I skippered the yacht through what's called the Crennan Canal, which was really quite challenging. So I had a yacht that would only just steer itself at the speed we had to go down this canal in. Managed to get it slightly jammed across the canal at one point, which was extremely embarrassing, and nearly towed a bunch of people in who had caught hold of the bow of the yacht to try and help me turn the thing around, and then accidentally nearly towed him into the water, which was was a little bit unfortunate. But I mean, the sailing up there was absolutely incredible. The scenery was beautiful. If you're familiar with Scotland, it's generally a pretty chilly sort of place, being right at the northern tip of our country. But that meant the beaches were fairly deserted, but they were absolutely beautiful. Incredible sandy coves flanked by these sort of great big cliffs, and we were sailing around them and had them almost exclusively to ourselves, shared only with a few sheep.
Wow.
So that was a lovely experience. And in the summer, the sunset is really late, so you have these wonderful long evenings to sort of admire the ocean scenery, and I enjoy that a lot.
I think mentally, including me, most of our listeners will be visualizing about what it takes to be in the summer in Scotland now. We all have been locked down now for 8-9 months, but I'm sure we'll be out there soon.
Oh, yeah. The thought of all that fresh air and open space, it feels like 2020 hasn't had very much of that, I should think. For most people.
Totally, Richard. So before we get into the rapid random fire questions round, or what we call a Nutters round in honor of Howard Nutt, let us talk us through your hobbies and interests. What are your hobbies and interests?
Well, I think that surfing and sailing I've already talked about enough,
Right.
but they're definitely a hobby and interest. I think flying is another one. My interest in the military that I spoke about earlier sort of started out with an interest in flying. The Royal Air Force offered me something called a flying scholarship to go learn to fly. That was really great start to sort of a lifelong interest in a hobby that was really far too expensive and time consuming for me, but all the same, I did manage to keep my license up for some years. Explored all sorts of flying, but really settled with aerobatics as being the kind of thing that really flicked my switch. And whilst flying small aircraft with propellers on the front of them is not conducive to family life, partly because it's a very expensive and singular hobby. It's also really dangerous to have a small child running around something like that. I'm now just the biggest ever flying nerd. I'm not far away from Heathrow, and although there's been a bit of a paucity of aeroplanes through lockdown, I still can't resist looking at the aeroplanes as they go over. And I also have a light aircraft field near me, so watching aircraft fly, and I'm treated the occasional aerobatic display of somebody else having the fun, but I still really enjoy watching it, and just generally take an interest in aviation and aeroplanes and the engineering and design that goes into them.
Wow, that's amazing. And I wish next time when you do get a proper license, you have to take me out for a spin.
You're on for sure.
I've done what we call skydiving a couple of times, but that's the closest. That's the closest I've gone to the sky. But doing this, I can't even drive the car properly, let alone drive.
Well, it's simpler. There's so few things to hit when you're up in the air. It's driving a car is a far more intense kind of exercise I found anyway. At least from 1 minute to the next.
Got you. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So, let's officially enter the rapid random fire questions now. Ready?
I'm quite nervous now, given how badly I've done at answering your questions quickly before. I'm not really sure how I'm going to manage this. But yeah, hit me.
Let's go for that. What's the nickname that your friends have given you, and what does it mean?
Well, that would be probably Dickie B, because obviously Rich is an easy nickname for me, but you're probably looking for other ones.
Correct.
Dickie is just short for Richard, and my surname is Bennett. So yeah, I got plastered the title Dickie B.
That's good. We'll put the headline as your podcast. Listen to Dickie B. That's nice. That's nice. So, what do you miss about your childhood?
Cycling, probably. You used to take my mountain bike out, and I lived fairly close to the country, and used to be able to get my mountain bike out and go cycling through all the mud and down various sort of little trails and things that I and I felt I knew them better than anybody else. Me and my other little friends kind of felt like the area that I covered, which still I think was fairly large even as an adult. It felt like it was my territory, and then used to be able to cycle around and I knew it all really, really well. Every little bump and every little jump and things that I could do with my bike. I miss that a bit. Yeah.
100%. That those days of less health and safety, more fun, more outdoors, right? These days, I need to take my kids to the park, and we are fully loaded with all the top to bottom, and I just wonder what's happening here. So yeah, that's good.
Yes. Although I wonder how much I've worried my parents.
Yeah. True. Totally true. If you could be any male or female sports star, who would you like to be?
I don't know. I'm going to probably pick someone like maybe Kelly Slater. Professional surfer, for little better reason than I'd simply be able to spend a lot of time doing the sort of thing that just really love.
Nice. That's good. So what trait do you like the most about yourself?
How about patience?
Oh, nice.
Not least because it took me a while to think about it. But I think it's not because I'm a very patient person, but I like myself more when I am patient. I think that's probably the right way to put it.
You have a very good soothing voice, I have to tell you, and I'm sure listeners will agree to me. Literally, you have a very good soothing voice. Nice.
Oh, thank you.
So what's the most funniest movie you have ever seen?
I'm sorry, I just don't know.
No? What?
I think maybe some of the Monty Python ones, things like Life of Brian. I have a very simple sense of humour.
That's it.
So that's probably quite a standout one. Or I suppose actually, again, it's quite an old one, but Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I just watched that so many times when I was a kid that I almost learnt the script. In fact, I pretty much knew the script, and I read all the books and things behind it. But yeah, that's probably those two, if I could have two.
Oh, that's it, 100%. Why not? So what's on your bucket list?
Well, actually, parachuting. I'd love to go and do some parachuting. It was something I missed out in my life so far, and I've had opportunities to do it. Not done it yet because well, the sailing and the surfing and stuff are already on the list of things that I've kind of invested time in doing. But yeah, I'd love to go and do a parachute jump.
Brilliant. Definitely you should. What's an ideal weekend for you?
I think one where I get to get outside and go for a run, for sure. I need my running as well as enjoying it. Just really need it as a way to sort of de-stress, relax, and get a bit of fresh air. I think playing some sort of a board game with my wife and son, I think that's great. Sort of bit of family time. There will be an enormous meal in there somewhere, which also means that I need to go for the run. At least one. I think and some sort of outing or activity. I don't mind too much what, but to go out and maybe go for a walk or go and sort of play in the park with a frisbee or just do something. I like to think that when I look back on weekends or any time in particular, there's something that stands out. Okay, that was the weekend I did X or Y.
Perfect. So if you're about to get into a fight, which I'm sure you won't, what song comes on your as soundtrack?
Well, it'd have to be Eye of the Tiger, I suppose, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I think most of the time the top two or top pick for this question is always this Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah, I think. Well, I suppose there's something different. I mean, I don't. Obviously, I've had the martial arts experience. It tells me it's really not worth getting into any fights.
Right.
Not for me personally. So something that gets me fired up is usually Red Hot Chili Peppers. Love their music.
Got you. So if you do get into a fight, but if you're arrested with no explanation, what would your friends and family assume that you had done?
Something foolish.
Is there any experiences in the past like that? No?
Yes, there are a few where I've probably bitten off more than I can chew. But yeah, been a little bit unlucky here and there, and sort of walked into the wrong situation, and then failed to get myself out of it very effectively, or carried on wading in. So yeah, they'll probably assume that's just happened again.
Exactly. I like the way how you kind of brought a corporate language into situations, extricated myself out. It's quite nice. Well done you. No wonder you were the coach for PWC. Any complications, just this is what you do.
Yeah, that's it.
Good. Who haven't you seen or talked to in a long time and you hope that they're doing okay?
Yeah, I've got quite a few friends actually that are probably in that category. I think like most people, haven't seen as much of my sort of, there are a group of friends that I grew up with, was at university with, that sort of thing. It's not so much that I can't contact them, but it's just that I haven't really contacted them as much as I should.
Got you.
And probably my dad as well, who's in a care home, and so haven't seen as much of him as I'd like to, and haven't probably I've just not seen him for 2 weeks now, but that's still quite a long time for him.
Yes, totally.
So I look forward to seeing him this weekend.
Oh, nice. Please do send my regards, because my family, they're back in India. So obviously I can't. It's quite nice for you to have that personal touch, especially in this COVID weather, which is not great for loved ones. Great.
That's right.
So your 7-year-old asks you, if Santa Claus is real, what do you say?
That's very pertinent at the moment. So it's a good rehearsal.
Yeah.
So I think if he's really asking if he's real, at his age, then I give him, I ask him what he thinks.
Yes.
And what maybe we'll go into something philosophical around what he means by real, and to what extent he needs Santa Claus to be a human being, or if he can still be real even if he's not physically traversing the earth. And we might think about some ways in which things can be real without being physically real. So depending on my appetite and his patience for a philosophical discussion, I might go that far. If there's none of that, then I think at 7 I'm just about ready to say, okay, no, he's not that guy in the white beard.
It's me who's buying you the gift. Better
Yeah,
listen to
exactly.
me.
I want credit for those presents, right?
Yeah, that's quite nice. And I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. So my 9-year-old realized Santa's not real. So he kind of ensured that his youngest doesn't come. It's Daddy and Mommy who's buying the gift.
Oh, what a meanie.
Exactly. And my youngest was like, what? So when the flip side of that is now they don't need to behave anymore. It's because Santa is no more going to come anyway. So what's the point behaving till December to get the gift all year?
Oh, well, you see, I mean, when my son was a little bit younger, in a probably slightly misguided act of imagination, I told him that the little red light on the motion sensor of the burglar alarm was Santa watching him. Because I couldn't work out any other way of describing how Santa knew if he'd been good or not. And then that kind of got taken a bit too literally, so I had to put the brakes on that one. But I think the idea that Daddy's watching him is probably a little bit more believable, actually.
Yeah, that makes sense to you, and I'm sure a few listeners will be picking that advice. Nice. So if you could make a rule for a day and everyone had to follow it, what would it be?
Well, it's so cheesy, isn't it? But I think I'd just say, just be kind to one another.
Nice.
But I'd love to think of something a bit more exciting. But it is a quick fire round, so I'm afraid that's probably the best answer I've got.
To be honest, that's the whole theme behind this podcast, actually. And I'm glad that you said that, which is nice. If Jurassic Park was real, would you visit it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, dinosaurs. Why wouldn't you? I mean, I know it could bring about the end of creation or something like that, which sort of where Jurassic Park started to go, and it'll probably all end in tears. But I'd still have to go. I mean, who wouldn't want to? Who could live with themselves having missed out on the chance to see a T-Rex or a Brontosaurus or something?
God, yeah, I freaked out even going to British Museum. So not British Museum, the Science Museum where they had the T-Rex there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so not the Science Museum. God, what am I talking? Natural History Museum.
Yeah, I could have been either. But I mean, what they do now with these animatronics things is obviously, my son's really interested in dinosaurs because most kids are as they grow up.
Right.
But it's absolutely incredible. They really bring the things to life now. I'd love going back and seeing them compared to the dry bones that still used to fire my imagination when I was a kid.
Yeah, I freaked out the moment when I stepped in, even though I know this is just a machine, right? Or something. When it stood back and looked at you like with a sound, oh, then I'm like, my son was like, yes, Daddy. I'm like, okay.
That's right. I'm going to take a step back now.
Yeah, totally. I know this year, most of our birthday plans was a washout. What's your plan to celebrate your next birthday?
Well, I'm not a huge birthday celebrating sort of person, but I think just celebrating with family, it's a good excuse to get together, and you can't have too many of those. So yeah, just a meal with family, invite a few people and make a bit of an occasion out of it.
Perfect. And that's the rapid random questions done. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll move to the normal round.
I could go back to slower answers again.
Yes, that's it. So who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Well, I think in recent years, I think we have someone called a career coach where I work now, and she's been hugely supportive. Probably the person that's done the most to develop my career in my career to date, and that's been you know, a really well judged mix of sort of support and of challenge. It's you know, really opened my eyes to the way in which you can coach somebody along in their career. Actually, it's set a really good example for me.
Family?
Yeah, I think yeah, both my parents have been, you know, pretty influential on me. I think my father's sort of interest in flying, well, my interest in flying things came from him, who, you know, he was a pilot, and I think you know, coming to know him you know, a little bit more sort of later on in life. Not he wasn't around when I was a kid, but I think as you grow up, you get to understand your parents in you know, in a different way. And I think I got to know my dad a lot more as in my sort of late teens and early 20s, as I sort of started to navigate life and you know, build my own career. In some ways, it moved me outside of my parents' orbit, because they'd never really had anything to do with the military in the past. But that meant that they gave me a little bit of a different perspective, and they could always sort of ground me in where I started and what they knew of me when I was a kid. And I've always found that really helpful to go back to help me sort of understand what I was doing next, what I was doing well at, and to remind me perhaps where my strengths were and how to apply those to what I was trying to do.
If you could describe your partner in one line or one word, what would you say?
Certainly supportive and loving.
It's quite nice you took the time to say, because she'll be listening to this.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah.
Totally. So I know you know the answer already. Who's the kindest person you know?
Yeah, good question. There's not what I can't think of any. I just think of quite a few, but you know, I'd certainly put my wife up there. Again, you know, not because she's listening, because I don't think she is, but she would probably be one of the kindest people I know. Yeah.
Totally. I think, you know, people who miss out the wife on the influential in life and career tend to pick this answer. That's why I need to specifically ask this question, just in case, to cover you.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I know we are in this COVID climate. It's been 8-9 months now in lockdown. So what have you observed lately that reminded you that people are kind?
I think the way that, you know, the context you gave to that sort of makes me think about the way in which I've seen people look after each other whilst we're working remotely. I think, I'm not sure if I'd seen before such emphasis, certainly in civilian life, on team building, team strength, and really valuing the importance of people knowing one another and handling, you know, and giving each other support at work. And it's not just saying that it's important, it's dedicating time to it in a day to go, right, well, you know, put this in your calendar, we're going to have 30 minutes of drop-in team time. There's no agenda, it's unstructured, just sort of come and be together. Those sorts of actions, I think, have been you know, some of the most human sort of things I've seen for a while. And the, you know, as part of that, this sort of focus on mental health that we've seen come out of the woodwork in places. I know it hasn't everywhere, but certainly I've been lucky enough to be amongst people in an organization that does that.
So what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
Probably it's a tie. There are two, right? They're both really important to me. One is to work on your strengths and not worry too much about your weaknesses. I think that's really important. Second is so much of life is about personalities, and you know, you choose your career when you're really young because you think driving a train or flying a plane will be really, really amazing. Whereas increasingly you find as you go into a career and navigate the world, that actually the people you're amongst are the ones who will make you successful and make you happy. And so you should choose a career based on the sorts of people that you find in it. And it's not that there's anywhere with particularly nasty people or difficult people, but you choose the people who appreciate you and you can appreciate in turn.
Wow, very, very powerful. Totally. So what's the best piece of advice you have received and from whom?
I mean, I couldn't claim credit for either of those two observations. I'm sure I've got them from somewhere, and I've definitely heard the strengths one from a number of people. I should credit the strengths one to somebody. I just can't think who it is.
Yeah, that's nice. I think, don't worry. I think if somebody listens to, somebody got this message from the very first time from you, the credit goes to you.
Well, yeah, so that may be the case for whoever I listen to as well.
Correct. I don't think anybody, there is so many quotes. If you go and quote somebody, there is, then you go and double check, somebody will always come and tell you, it's actually not that person, it's this person. Then it just goes on.
Yeah.
So,
I think there's something in Muhammad Ali's quote. It's not because it's a great bit of advice for me, but he said it's when you're this great, it's hard to be modest. And I just love that on so many different levels. Partly just for the sheer audacity of it. And it reminds me sometimes to just that there is a rightness to just being brave. But there's also this, you can really shock people with sheer arrogance, and perhaps sometimes not good to go that far.
Totally. I think the one quote that's there in my office, which is there, it's from Mike Tyson, which is said, everybody has a plan until I punch them on the face.
Yes. Yeah. That's definitely up there as well. I could really relate to that one. Particularly as someone who doesn't like necessarily planning in detail in advance.
Correct. So that's one thing which you always look upon and say, oops, okay, then. So that's it.
That's right. Yeah, this plan ain't gonna last long.
Totally. We talked about your life, your career, your passions, few random questions, people influential in your life as well. What's next for you, Richard?
I think, well, in terms of private life and then more of the same, I hope. I feel quite comfortable in where I am career-wise. Continue to develop. I don't think I ever want to really stop learning or stand still for any length of time. And so I think the role that I have at the moment can still be sort of expanded and understand how to, for me personally, how to help lead the bids and business development activities that we have, and to continue sort of reaching higher and how do we help shape the right sort of behaviours around teams of bid and BD people to make sure they're coherent and joined together, and support our practice.
Brilliant, Rich. Oh, DKB, as they call it. So thank you so much for your time, Rich. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk on such a short notice. Congratulations on your nomination on the APMP UK Leadership Award. Wish you all the good health and happiness. Please do continue to inspire bid and proposal colleagues and everybody around you. Stay healthy, stay happy, and please pass my regards to your family and your colleagues and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, you too. Been really good to talk to you.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundaram,
signing off.